Massive floods in Brazil have been compared to the devastation of Hurricane Katrina, which hit New Orleans in 2005. So far, the unprecedented inundations recorded in the state of Rio Grande do Sul have affected over 2 million people. The disaster has sparked an international wave of solidarity, with thousands of donations pouring in from around the world. What led to the advance of the waters over so many cities? Who are the ones responsible for this humanitarian tragedy? Earth Echoes investigates how far the event is related to the worsening climate crisis on the planet. Before that, feel free to like and share the content right at the beginning of the video. Intense rains have been punishing hundreds of cities in southern Brazil since the end of April. The large volume of water has flooded over 400 cities, inundating entire neighborhoods and displacing millions of inhabitants. In just 15 days, it rained more than expected for the state over 5 months. Hundreds of cities have declared a state of public calamity, acknowledging the disaster and the need for government intervention. Imagine rain that doesn't stop and accumulates to the point of covering cars, house roofs, even reaching the second floor of buildings. That's the scenario experienced for almost a month by thousands of people in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Destroyed houses, floating cars, closed businesses, and thousands of families and animals displaced. The aspect of devastation is being compared to the one caused by Katrina in 2005. 19 years ago, the floods caused by the hurricane left over 80% of the city of New Orleans underwater. Thousands of people died or were left homeless, forcing the territory to rebuild from scratch. The number of people fatally affected in Brazil does not compare to the American disaster. However, the severity of the inundations draws a parallel, with decisive lessons to help Brazil recover from the catastrophe. In Brazil, the uninterrupted storms were the result of a rare conjunction of various climatic factors occurring simultaneously. A mass of warm air over the central region of the country blocked the advance of the cold front parked in the south, causing continuous rains. In addition to this, the influence of the El Niño phenomenon, warming the waters of the Pacific Ocean, contributed to the stagnation of moisture over the state. Brazilian scientists consider that this umbrella of instabilities was further exacerbated by the worsening of global warming. The estimate is that climate change has made the rain 15% more intense than it would normally be. Researchers from the Climameter Consortium state that the city's infrastructure was not prepared for such extreme consequences. The event is considered the greatest climatic tragedy in Brazil's history, in terms of those affected. The rains that flooded the state affected nearly 90% of the municipalities, impacting over 2 million residents. More than 540,000 people had to leave their homes. 88 are still missing, while 157 lost their lives forever. The relief of the capital, Porto Alegre, is another key point to understand the accumulation of water in the metropolitan region of the state. The city is surrounded by mountains and is located in a plain, with an altitude of only 10 meters above sea level. Additionally, the Guaíba Lake that bathes the capital's shore receives the confluence of 5 main rivers, which run together until the Atlantic Ocean. The heavy rains and the flooding of the rivers all drained into the lake, which, this time, could not contain the above-normal volume. The waters of Guaíba exceeded the flood level of 3 meters, reaching a record level of over 5 meters in height. The civil defense issued alerts for the extreme flooding, which quickly became the largest flood in Porto Alegre's history. The drainage of the waters was hindered by the narrow passage of the Patos Lagoon, responsible for discharging the excess into the ocean. On the other end, the Atlantic also faced rainstorms and winds, which raised the sea levels, preventing the advance of the waters. All these factors culminated in the occurrence of floods and unimaginable disasters in hundreds of cities in the state. The images reveal a devastating scenario. similar to that experienced in New Orleans, and only imagined in the worst nightmares. Nearly 1 million properties were left without water, and 6 dams in the state are in emergency situations. The majority of residents had to leave their homes, seeking refuge in shelters, family homes, and friends' houses. Rescue teams, with planes and helicopters, have been flying over the main areas for 3 weeks, rescuing residents and animals isolated by the waters. The rescue of a horse on the roof of a house touched the entire country, symbolizing the resilience of the Brazilian people. Rio Grande do Sul Governor Eduardo Leite declared that the state needs a Marshall Plan to recover from the catastrophe. The need for reconstruction is virtually total, starting with transportation infrastructure. The floods knocked down bridges, flooded bus terminals, and closed the state's international airport, limiting access indefinitely. The situation is so serious that it prompted 3 visits from President Lula this month, accompanied by a large delegation of ministers and the armed forces. Hunger, cold, and lack of energy are among the main concerns of the authorities. Health follows suit, with the possibility of an increase in diseases such as hepatitis and leptospirosis, which circulate through water. Contrary to the devastating scenario, the tragedy mobilized a wide network of national and even international solidarity for the flood victims. Donations of water, food, clothes, blankets, and all kinds of necessities arrive constantly from various parts of the world. The United States announced the donation of items totaling $150,000 to the hardest-hit cities in Rio Grande do Sul. An aircraft loaded with 300 kilograms of donations and 61 volunteers from Portugal disembarked in the country to directly assist impacted families. Doctors, nurses, and psychologists are working free of charge to aid the injured and trauma caused by the devastation. Veterinarians and protection NGOs have built dozens of shelters from scratch, where animals of various species also receive care and attention. In facing the greatest crisis in Rio Grande do Sul's history, humanity is reclaiming a sense of empathy, helping the people of the region to resist and rebuild. As water recedes in some regions, residents find their homes and belongings destroyed under thick layers of mud. A forecast from the Hydraulic Research Institute estimates that the level of Lake Guaíba is expected to remain above overflow until May 31st. However, new rainfall events may impact the scenario and hinder the recession of waters, particularly in the capital Porto Alegre. To assist those who have lost everything, President Lula has committed to creating a legal framework to facilitate the sending of federal resources. The Brazilian government has announced tens of billions of reais in relief actions, including credit lines for companies and income assistance for families. Meanwhile, the government of Rio Grande do Sul plans to build 4 temporary cities to accommodate the more than 77,000 victims currently in shelters. In Porto Alegre, the municipality will adopt measures similar to those implemented in New Orleans after the devastation caused by Hurricane Katrina. Consulting firm Alvarez & Marshall, which operated in Louisiana, has been hired to enhance social assistance programs in the city. However, the support and measures following the catastrophe do not explain why so many cities were unprepared before the climatic event. Regarding accountability, accusations are exchanged among local, state, and federal authorities. This is because a 2015 study already revealed the high probability of floods, which were not taken seriously and turned the event into a forewarned disaster. The Porto Alegre city government is accused of neglecting the agency responsible for maintaining the flood prevention system. In Congress, environmentalists denounce a destruction package that weakens environmental legislation in favor of real estate and livestock speculation. In the United States, there is FEMA, the federal agency exclusively for controlling natural disasters. However, Brazil only has the civil defense and lacks any regulatory body to prevent critical phenomena. It is still impossible to determine how many people and entire cities will need to be relocated in southern Brazil. What is known is that over a dozen municipalities practically no longer exist. Facing a scenario where climate change is increasingly extreme, the world needs to prepare for nature's serious responses. Hope lies in the possibility that today's suffering can bring future lessons for new prevention and protection policies for the entire global community. Earth Echoes exposes the impact and consequences of climate change in southern Brazil. Have you ever faced a similar situation? Feel free to share your opinion on the tragedy in the comments. Don't forget to like and share the content with as many people as possible. See you next time.